Hey everyone, how's it going? As of the time of this recording, it is 4 a.m. and I cannot sleep. And this is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for the better part of a year now, so I figured I would just go ahead and spill my thoughts on that. If you're new to my channel, the Ramble format is one where I do exactly that, without a script. I just talk completely off the top of my head, which means it's going to be significantly less structured. If I start a point and meander off and don't finish it, feel free to prompt me in the comments and I will elaborate on what I was originally going to talk about. So I've been a voice actor for about 15 years. I guess you could still call me an aspiring voice actor, but over the years, my opinion of voice acting, the community, the industry, and just the craft itself has really kind of shifted in a way that surprised me. I want to say first of all that if I allude to any people or things that have happened in the past, I'm going to do so, anonymously. I'm not going to name drop or do anything like that because ideally I would still like to keep the door open for future voice acting endeavors. But there were still a good bit of things that I kind of wanted to get off my chest in regards to voice acting as a whole. I also wanted to open and say that if any of my voice actor Twitter mutuals or voice actor friends in general find this and feel like I'm talking about them, chances are if we're still mutuals and we're good, we're on talking terms and everything like that, I'm clearly not talking about you. I don't really associate with people online that I don't respect or get along with to some degree. And if you feel like this relates to you, it's not really meant to be an attack, just kind of talking out loud. Just sort of wanted to express these thoughts I've been having for years and years. I sort of made a video along this same vein, I would say about a year and a half ago, called YouTubers Aren't Your Friends, in which I sort of just talk about a lot of the things that bother me about YouTube communities and YouTubers and the people and sort of the hanger-ons in those communities. This isn't really going to be about that as much as it's going to be about just things that I didn't really expect to encounter going into voice acting. And hopefully it will sort of serve as a bit of a cautionary tale to anyone who might be interested in voice acting, to convince you to maybe reinspect your options and priorities. So back in 2005, 2006 or so, when I was in the middle of high school, I met some online friends and both of them encouraged me to try voice acting because they said that I had a really distinct sounding voice. One of them, fun fact, was Kira Buckland, who went on to voice 2B in Nier Automata. She told me specifically that I sounded like the Japanese voice actor for Sasuke from Naruto, who I think she had a bit of a crush on back in the day. I still haven't really heard what he sounds like. I'm assuming I was meant to take it as a compliment. And the other being my friend Chris, who doesn't really do voice acting as much anymore. He actually works full-time, managing what I believe is a hotel chain. He's doing very well for himself. He got married not too long ago, I think. Like, he's a really great guy. Chris, if you're out there and you're listening, you're an alright guy. Funniest guy I've ever met, but as a person, just okay. And I remember that they convinced me to try to audition for stuff, and back in the day, there were like these voiceover forums and everything, where it was usually just a lot of like hobby anime dubs, hobby video game dubs, and I was one of the few people at the time who had like a decent microphone, on top of having more of a deep voice than a lot of the people on there. So I was usually getting a lot of roles. Of course, it didn't really matter, because obviously they were completely unpaid. They were just sort of amateur hobby projects, and most of the time, the person would completely abandon the project. You'd never hear anything about it ever again, because they realized, oh shit, this requires work. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. But it's definitely safe to say that I was a bit of a big fish in a small pond back then. And that I was 17, 18, got like a little bit of a big head, like you do when you're 18. Didn't really take voice acting super seriously at the time because I was pursuing a college education, and I kind of suspected that from what I had seen of my friends who had attempted to move to LA to do voiceover, have to get a job bussing tables, working at coffee shops, etc., that it wasn't really going to be something that was entirely sustainable. So I sort of kept it in my back pocket as like just sort of like a dream idea, like, oh, it'd be fun to voice in video games and anime and commercials and what have you. And all throughout college, I would get little cameos here and there. I got a little cameo as the Space Orphan Captain in Dragon Ball Z Abridged. I have it under the fucking voice acting playlist here on my channel if you want to hear the highlight for yourself. I just kind of put it up there just as like a quick reference, so people could be like, oh, you were in the show? Where? And I'd be like, yeah, that like 10-second clip, and they'd be like, oh, cool. I have a friend named Anthony Sardina, used to go by Antfish. previously used to make a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Abridged. I say used to because he went pro as well with voiceover, and he kind of realized that he was wasting his time and potential by just doing a bunch of abridged series stuff. But he asked me to do a little role on there as Barry the Slinger. I wish I could show you or reference it, but I'm pretty sure it got like copyright claimed and taken down or whatever. But for anyone who's seen that episode, yeah, that was me. I was Barry the Slinger. Obviously nothing glamorous or super interesting. But that's just kind of what I enjoyed about it, was just doing little things with friends. It wasn't about the glitz or the glamour or the money. It was just someone messaging me like, hey, I need you to do this really funny little thing for me. And I was like, dude, hell yeah, absolutely. And then I'd watch it later and I'd be like, okay, that was really well edited. Good job. But for the longest time, I saw a lot of my friends trying to go for voiceover as a full-time profession. And more often than not, they would really, really struggle. And it always looked to me like something that is just so completely out of your hands. I should say up front that there's going to be a lot of parallels between this and the acting world, like Hollywood in general, because they're both show business. So I'm not under any impression that this is exclusive to voice acting. I'm anticipating a comment here or there of people saying, oh yeah, but that's also acting. It's like, yeah, no, I agree. I'm sure it could also be applied to art, to fucking, I don't know, photography, whatever. Any artistic craft. But all I know is voice acting, being someone who doesn't understand rule of thirds and also can't draw to save my life. So just bear with me and accept my limited worldview, okay? But the main thing that really sort of irked me about doing voiceover in the first place is the fact that you have to be kind of superficial and do a lot of networking just to get an audition. Not even to get the role, just to get the chance to get the role. And it might be a little bit of an immature worldview to have, where I'm just like, oh yeah, I want to get the part if I've earned it, if they feel like I'm the right guy for the job. You know, if I get along with the director, I get along with the director, that's all good. I've never really been the kind of guy that feels the need to sort of slither and slime my way around in an industry, because I've known a lot of people like that, and they just sort of go through people and friends like tissue paper. And trust me, I completely understand that there are a lot of industries in which that is the norm, where you pretty much just have to kiss ass all the way up to the top. And I think that's kind of one of the reasons that I prefer YouTube and all of the different platforms in which people can support their favorite YouTubers, is I can be as authentic and true to myself, as cheesy as that sounds, without losing any money. I mean, obviously, if I went and, used some gamer words or whatever on live streams, then yeah, that would probably impact my bottom line. But aside from any obvious extreme examples, usually if I have a falling out with somebody, I can pretty much just pack up my stuff and carry on the next day and live and learn and not really have to lose sleep over it. Just keep making videos and writing scripts and all of that fun stuff, just like I always have. But in the voiceover sphere, I think I'm just gonna be blunt and say it's basically middle school. I know I said that about YouTube communities in the past as well, but I still maintain that. There are a lot of very adolescent, gossipy circles. And again, you're gonna find that everywhere. But holy moly, if it isn't especially true in the artistic communities. I have an anecdote of a former friend who did work at a very big studio. Like, he was kind of an up-and-coming, I believe what you do in the beginning is you do a lot of wall of work, which is sort of the background voices of, people shouting in crowds and ambient conversations in the back of a restaurant, very faintly audible. And then eventually you sort of work your way up the ranks and get cast as a main character. And this person was just a very straight shooter. He didn't blow smoke up your ass if he needed to, but he was very nice. And there was a female that was a casting director at this gigantic studio, and she started spreading rumors about him and just saying, oh, he's really difficult to work with. And having known this guy, like, he's not difficult to work with. He's very pleasant and amicable. And this big name voice actor at that studio came to my friend and said, hey, there's some rumors going around that you're like a nightmare to work with, and you're not reliable, and that people shouldn't hire you, people shouldn't cast you in their projects. And he was just like, what the fuck? No, I literally have no idea where that could come from. And the person's just like, all right, I believe you for now. And I remember that was sort of one of the big turning points where I was like, do I want to be in an industry in which if I make the wrong impression on someone, try as hard as I may to make a good one, they can just go around and gossip and basically try to impact my bottom line just because, he didn't like the way that I looked at him, or he felt like I was being insincere, or he didn't like a joke post I made on Twitter. But it actually gets a bit deeper than that, believe it or not. I want to briefly briefly talk about the sorts of people that you will commonly come across in the voiceover sphere. It's kind of a new wave. When I was doing it back in the late 2000s, mid to late 2000s, it was just a lot of people that liked video games and anime, and they liked Johnny Young Bosch or Yuri Lowenthal or Troy Baker or Nolan North, like just, a lot of big names, Wendy Lee, that sort of thing. For me, my personal favorite has always been Jameson Price, who you'll probably recognize Jameson Price if you've played Catherine. He's the guy who's like, allow me to tell you a bit about whiskey, now that you've finished your glass.
I know this is sudden, but here is some trivia about beer, now that you've emptied your pint glass.
Just extremely smooth voice. If I ever get the chance to meet him, that would certainly be my senpai moment. But yeah, when I was younger, it was just a lot of nerds. A lot of forum trolls too, but they were kind of just messing around. It's actually funny, not to ramble, well I guess it's in the name, but I was actually at a convention, and one of my online friends who I had just met there for the first time in person since having known him for a decade, came up to me. He's like, oh dude, do you remember so-and-so? And it was this girl that I had like this gigantic feud with back in the day on these forums. And she was like really nice, and she's like, oh my god, hey, and we had been drinking a bunch, and I was just like, I'm sorry for being such a bitch, and I was like, it's okay, you were really funny about it though, and like we hugged, and I was just like, oh, it was great seeing you. So even though there were a lot of shitposting trolls and everything on the forums back then, I don't think they're all bad. I think a lot of it was just kind of, we were all angsty young adults who were just, we didn't feel like there was any sort of other person on the other side of the computer, so we were just doing the nastiest, pettiest, meanest shit. I think the worst thing I did when I was younger, as like an aspiring voice actor, was I was just really pretentious. Like the way that Onision is now, that's how I was when I was a teenager. I was just like, I'm an intellectual. Religion is bad. Like... I thought I was so fucking cutting edge. But nowadays, I think the thing that really irks me the most when it comes to any voice acting communities is it's very, very political. And again, you could say that about anything in any community. I'm sure there's like woodworkers out there, and they're just like, not my president, and you're like, just build my table. But it's sort of the norm on Twitter. I can't really speak to Instagram or fucking Snapchat. What are the kids using nowadays? I don't know. I think it's mostly Instagram. So my girlfriend tells me anyway. I have no idea. And so on Twitter, you'll get a lot of people who just constantly need to sort of posture, I'm a good person, I'm a good person, I hate orange man, immigrant good, white people bad. Just sort of that on repeat ad nauseum. Not saying there isn't any sort of nugget of wisdom in there, but a lot of the time it's presented at a very surface level, clearly just sort of trying to score brownie points with other people. Like, just because I don't constantly post about my disdain for, a presidential figure or a member of the Senate or some other big public figure, doesn't mean I like them. I just sort of think that repeating the same thing that everyone else is repeating makes me feel sort of like a tool. Like if I have an original thought, like, oh, hey guys, this just occurred to me. Did you ever notice this or that? Then yeah, I'll post that. But if it's just, hey guys, you know who's bad? Bill Cosby. That's right. The guy's not a great guy. Just wanted to remind you that I agree with all of you. I'm gonna go watch anime now, thanks. The whole thing is just very sort of circle jerky. But here's one thing that I've really been struggling to articulate in a way that isn't going to make me look like a horrible person. Anyone who's been on the internet for any amount of time has obviously noticed the rise in the trans demographic, I guess you could say. Demographic, I guess, yeah, that's probably a fitting enough word. Population, whatever. And I should just preface up front, got no problem with it. I'm not anti-trans, I don't think trans people are subhuman, blah, blah, blah. Just like with any other faction of person, be they man, woman, liberal, conservative, as long as you're relatively level-headed and reasonable, I will pretty much always listen to you, 100% of the time. But it sort of seems like nowadays, if there's a particular minority subset of a population that is behaving in a way that you find a little bit, let's say, unpalatable or abrasive, it's really hard as a white dude in modern day, current year, for that not to constantly come off as, I hate this group of people. It's just kind of the go-to assumption, it's just like, even if you just ask a question like, why does this group do that? It's just like, wow, this guy fucking hates that group. No, I'm stupid. Can I just be stupid? Please, I'm not smart. And the reason I bring that up is because back in the day, it was always sort of a lot of like, here's an audition for a dude, here's an audition for a girl, here's an audition for an androgynous young character, male or female voices will work. Totally cool, nothing wrong with that. But now that I'm kind of in the thicket of all of this, and once upon a time I was seriously sitting down and going, yeah, I think if I really make the effort and I really push and I put all my eggs in this one voiceover basket, I can really blow up and get big and get a lot of big roles, etc., etc. Now a lot of the time when I get auditions, it's like, here's this cast of 2 male characters, an old man and an extremely deep-voiced 1,000-year-old wizard, and a cast of 30 females of varying ages and personality types, some specifically listed as, transgender, androgynous, etc., non-binary. And can I just say one thing? I've always taken issue in the past when people are like, Link from The Legend of Zelda should be female. And then people would respond, well, go make your own game series. It's like, okay, well, they're doing that now. A lot of people who want trans representation or fucking whatever, they went and they made their own games. And hey, more power to you, man. You're living the dream. You're doing it. You're starting it up. I respect it. Respect the hustle. And I wouldn't be surprised if the common response to me pointing that out, like, I'd like to have just more male roles that I could audition for and get my foot in the door more. People are going to say, well, how do you think that disenfranchised, non-binary, all these people felt throughout the years? And it's like, okay, yeah, fair point. I completely agree. However, I'm just sort of noticing that it's become this gigantic trend, I guess you could say, to have less and less male roles in games and anime. And to be clear, I'm talking primarily about a lot of like indie projects, a lot of small startup stuff, which is really all that us sort of casual voice actors have opportunities for. It's not every day. It's just like, hey, the new Pokemon game has voice acting. Do you want to be the professor? It's like, oh shit! Like, no, you gotta be on the VIP list in order for them to not just slam the door in your face. And I'm not necessarily saying that a lot of the, focus on more female and androgynous characters is a bad thing, but as someone who is trying to make a living and support myself financially, and probably a lot of other young men who are turning to voice acting and thinking, okay, I could really do this for a living, I could do this full-time as a job, they're probably looking around and going, where the fuck are all the guy roles? So it's just very disconcerting and disheartening when you realize just sort of the new wave of where things are going, and you're like, I guess there's just no room for me. Oh well. But moreover about the community, there is one thing that I just can never, ever stop being annoyed by, and that's just preachiness. It's extremely rampant on Twitter, but I'll follow a lot of voice acting people. I'll see someone with like 3,000-4,000 people that they're following, and they'll follow me, and just out of courtesy, I'll be like, sure, and I'll just follow them back, knowing 100% that they don't give a shit about me. They probably don't even like know my name. I just get lost in the rest of their insanely large please follow me back follow list. And I don't take it personally. I'm like, maybe a genuine friendship will spark from this, and we can collaborate on some sort of project. Obviously never ever happens. Usually they see like a goofy, slightly offensive, but nevertheless innocuous tweet that I make, and they go, I think this guy might be a Nazi, and then they unfollow me, and I'm like, yeah, kind of saw that coming. But there's just people all the time that are in those circles that will just tweet out like, never do this. It is extremely unprofessional. You will not be considered for a follow-up audition. You might be blacklisted from the industry. This is a rude, inconsiderate thing to do. And then later, like, I saw this person who's just like, don't go into voiceover expecting to do it for the fame or the money. Just do it because you like it. And it's like, yeah, I feel like that's the reason why most people do things is because they like it. Unless you're like going for your doctorate or you're trying to pass the bar exam or something. Those people might be in it just for the money. But voice acting pays essentially pennies in the grand scheme of things compared to any other occupation you might pick up. Retail pays more than voiceover. And for a lot of people, that's not a disincentive. They can go, you know what, it pays like shit, that's fine, but it's something I really, really love. I'm really crazy about the medium. And hey, fair enough, man. But I'm really impressed with the state of things and how it's even sustainable, unless you're just booking gigs left and right, recording like 3 different gigs a day. In which case, yeah, that's super profitable. But that is probably going to be like the 3% of the population that is already very, very cozy with certain directors. But that's something that I'll touch on a little bit later. I think what happens is you get a lot of these sort of small, aspiring voice actors, and they look at the big voice actors who are just sort of repeatedly posturing and just sort of standing on their soapbox, which I guess is kind of what Twitter's for. I just use my Twitter to talk about how much I love Monster Hunter World and Tron Bonne from Mega Man Legends. Might not be your cup of tea, but I'm quite happy with it. But there's just a lot of people in all these artistic communities that decide that, oh, I've made it. They'll get into like one relatively successful thing, not even like a huge universally acclaimed thing. They'll just get into like an indie game that picked up a bit of steam, and then they're like, okay, I'm a professional now. I know what I'm talking about. And then they'll go on Twitter and just sound off like, hear ye, everyone. I have been in a studio. I took a selfie to prove it. Feel free to bask in my enlightenment. And it's just like, okay, dude, like, just give a little tip. You don't got to make a big speech about it. It's fine. I'll listen. Just tone down the ego a little bit, just a bit, coming off a little diva-ish. And as someone who really values authenticity, whenever people do that, it's always just like, ugh. Because a lot of the time, you get the inkling that it's not because they're really trying to help you. It's more because they're sort of fishing for retweets. I saw this one person make a tweet. It was just like general advice. And then a big voice actor replied to them and was like, yeah, I definitely agree. And then they're like, oh, whoa, you're this big name person from this thing. And then they're like, yeah, no, good advice. And then they just say to them, oh, you know, I really like your work. I gave you a follow. And the person just doesn't respond. I check their follows. They didn't follow back. It's just very like, please notice me. It's just like, the whole thing is just, I think the word bootlicking kind of comes to mind at times. Maybe I'm a little bit too proud, but I've always sort of been of the belief that like, if you're gonna follow me or you're gonna give me a job, I want it to be because you like my work, not because I kissed your ass enough times. Is that irrational? I feel like that's a pretty agreeable philosophy, but in that community, a lot of the time it's like, if you post an opinion like that, you just get shut down immediately and like shamed. It's like, how could you even say that? It's not kissing ass. It's networking. This is how we get to know each other. It's just like, okay, well, it's excessive, is what I'm trying to say. The funny thing is that going into doing YouTube stuff was mostly aided by the fact that this microphone that I have here and the mixer that it's hooked up to and this room full of acoustic foam that makes me look like I'm in an insane asylum, like a big old padded cell. This was all because I was starting to get professional voiceover gigs, and I wasn't local to that studio. So they're like, if we're gonna take your auditions, you have to have at least this standard of audio quality. And I'm like, fuck. So I spent like $1,000 for the microphone, the audio equipment, like the acoustic foam, like the acoustical treatment, I think is the preferred nomenclature. All just so that if I get that email saying, oh, you have like 3 days to audition for this big thing, I can be like, okay, I got this. Instead of having to be like, shit, let me call a friend. Oh, dude, could I use your recording space? No, fuck, oh, you're moving, damn it. So I just want to be self-sufficient. So even though like I'm not really getting any voiceover work anymore, I still have it for when I need to record narration for YouTube videos like these. And then people can go, oh, you know what? Your audio quality does not sound like shit. So that's a plus. I will now subscribe to you. Because nobody told me when I was going to get into voice acting that it wasn't enough to just be good at doing voices or to be a good actor. You also had to be an audio engineer, and you had to be able to troubleshoot the tech. All the stuff that actual audio engineers and tech support guys do, you're expected to know how to do all of that too, and mixing and mastering and noise removal and all this other stuff, which is not that hard now that I've done it for 10 plus years. But back in the day, it was like, fuck, what is this? No one told me I was gonna have to become Blade Runner to audition for a Flash cartoon, but lo and behold, you do. But back onto the topic of money, the area that I live in, if you were to just get like a, single, like a studio apartment or something, it's like $600 a month. Presumably that's not including utilities, obviously not including food and gas and what have you. I got a pretty big gig from a pretty big company that got me $250. It was the largest sum of money I've ever earned from voice acting. Literally ever, of the 15 years I've been doing this and auditioning just year after year after year. Most of the time, if you get a small bit, they'll be like, oh, here's $50, here's $100. You can go on voices123voices.com, etc., all these other websites, but unless you have a big radio Don LaFontaine sort of quality to your voice, you're gonna just get shot down left and right. And then that premium that you're paying on those accounts in order to be able to show up in the recommendeds and be able to message people and all that good stuff, is going to be completely wasted because your voice isn't what they're looking for. Which, fair enough, like I'm not suggesting that just because you pay the premium to get the premium membership that, oh, these people should be hiring me, like I've earned it, I'm entitled. But it's just that extra little sting to be like, wow, what am I doing with my time and my money and my future? So needless to say, unless you just have a fucking godlike voice and everyone you know is like, I'll hire you right now, here's $300. Unless you're that guy or you can fill a niche, you can expect it to not be a terribly lucrative industry if you just sound like every other Joe Schmo that's walking in the door. By the way, it totally just occurred to me that I hope this isn't coming off as preachy. Like, I know I was just lampooning people on Twitter for just talking down to people and lecturing them like they know absolutely nothing. I'm definitely not trying to do that in this video. I'm just sort of speaking to my experiences of what I didn't expect. So in the event that anyone thinks that I'm sort of voice-splaining to anyone, it is definitely not my intention. This is just sort of my little chronicle. But here's the interesting part. So if you go to big name studios, and I just heard this from someone who knows things, I'm trying to be as fucking vague as possible. A lot of big studios that do, that do casting for video games and anime, their hourly rate is around like $30 an hour, which sounds great, because if you had like a 12-hour day where you're just doing voices, that would fucking suck to be doing voices like, woo, like all these crazy voices for 12 hours. You would have to take like a week off just to recover. Then you'd be sitting there like, oh, I'm earning like at least $350 doing this thing that I love. But the problem is, as it was explained to me, you could get a 1-hour gig just for that week alone. So all this auditioning and driving around and risking parking tickets and putting miles on your car, all just to record for 1 hour. Here's $35, see you next week, fucko. And you're expected to love it. It's like, oh, you've got this opportunity. This is this amazing privilege that you have. And it's like, yeah, no, I know, I love this. Like, this is so much fun, and I'm so grateful to be here. But I'm dying. Like, I need food, dude. I'm gonna die. And it's just like, well, you're clearly not fit for this position. It's like, no, okay, please. I'll eat sand. I'll eat the sand. I've heard it's even worse in LA because you'll drive all the way to LA. You'll do your audition after trying to look for parking for like 45 minutes at least. You'll do the audition. They'll be like, okay, thank you for coming. And you're like, okay, thank you. And you get in your car and you leave, drive all the way home. They call you back. We need you back here in an hour for a follow-up. Our casting director really liked how you sounded. We want you to come again. We want you to come back and record a new set of lines. And you're like, okay. And then you got to go all the way back to that studio, usually park illegally because there's never any parking in LA. Go in, do the audition, maybe you book it, maybe you don't, and then you come out and you get a big fucking expensive parking ticket sitting right under your windshield wiper. And so then a lot of the time you just kind of break even. It's like, okay, well, this is my life. That could be completely wrong, but I've heard from a lot of industry professionals that that is actually a very common thing to look forward to if you end up wanting to go to LA. To my knowledge, I think LA is good for video game voice acting, Texas is good for anime voice acting, and New York is good for commercial and radio. If I'm wrong about that, I implore people to correct me in the comments. I am by no means an expert. Even though I've been doing this for 15 years, I'm still a little bit of a hack, but at least I'm willing to admit it. But the other thing is, much like my other video where I sort of critiqued YouTubers and a lot of the people that inhabit those communities, voice actors are not your friends either. This may as well just be a new video series just called like Chase Complains. And all I do is just, you know what's got me down today, world? I have no friends and I don't know who to trust. But I've had so many people come along and they're just like, hey man, yeah, absolutely, let's hang out. Let's go chill and do all this stuff. And you know, I'm always here if you need someone to talk to, man. I've got your back. You'll post a joke and they'll respond like, haha, that's really funny. And they just do everything they can. They kind of build you up. And if you're naive like me, you'll be like, oh wow, they really do engage with me. And you know, I think I can consider this person a friend. I had a friend like that who's actually relatively successful when it comes to video game voiceover. And 2 months ago, he approached me and he just, after like months of ignoring me, he'd make a goofy tweet and I'd respond in kind and he would just ignore it. And then I would see like 99% of all the other tweets just getting his attention. And I'm like, you know, it's just Twitter, like who cares? And then I saw that going on the next 10 times I interacted with him and I'm like, I got a bad feeling about this one. So I messaged him just like, hey, is something going on? Like, it's totally fine if you have some issues with me. Like, I just want to know so I'm not all paranoid about it. And then he just unloaded me with this big paragraph like, oh, you did this thing and it reminded me of this thing that this really bad person did to me a long time ago. And I know that you didn't mean to, but it's just, I'm sorry, man, you're a really good person. And he literally said, you've been nothing but extremely nice to me, but this is just how I feel. And I was just like, okay, man. Yeah, I respect that. I really had no idea this was going on. I wish you would have told me sooner, but if you change your mind, let me know. And he's like, yeah, I will. And then 2 months later, I didn't get a word back from him. So I was like, okay, he's being one of these sort of like constantly conflict-avoidant people. So then I just unfollowed him on Twitter. And I saw recently he unfollowed me back and I'm just like, okay, I guess it's a clean resolution to that. And it's not so much that this is a big deal because like, oh, it's Twitter. But this is someone that I, for years, considered a very close friend. But I should have seen this coming when he ditched a friend of mine when he was in a rough situation a while back, where he had like a messy breakup with a girl who went publicly and she's like, he's an asshole. This person was just like, I can't let this affect my reputation. And it's like, wow, good job, dude. Very sincere. Very kind of you. all of those wholesome things you post about on the internet and claim to hate evil things and be composed solely of good things. Nailed it, my dude. But more than the community and more than the lack of work and the lack of pay, a lot of the issues for me is the red tape. There is a surplus at all given times of red tape. Some is reasonable, some is almost illusory, which is to say like, oh, fuck, I had no idea that was even a thing. Like, I'm a very transparent person. My entire life, I like to just sort of be myself and make jokes and not apologize for them. Obviously, I don't make like super edgy jokes, then people get upset and I'm like, what? It was just a joke. Like, that's a whole different category. But like, anytime I make a joke, I try not to make it at someone else's expense. I try to make it just generally kind of lighthearted or inconsequential. But when you're a really big name voice actor, from what I've observed, pretty much the only things that you can joke about are like things that everyone else agrees with. Like, hey, this Republican politician is a cunt. And then everyone's like, you said it, sister. It's like, okay, I bought myself some more time. That's another couple of years in this industry. Just keep talking. They clap, they nod. You're good. You have job security. We're fine. But I tried to be really, really careful for a long time. Like, I got cast in a relatively big production, and I was very respectful. I tweeted out to the team. I was like, thank you so much for, like, I didn't go online, and I was in a production of a project that, you know, I personally, it's not really my thing. I think that's the extent of what I said about it. Was just like, it's not really the sort of thing I like, but it's good. Like, it's well made, is what I said. And I'm pretty sure that's that's like the worst thing I've ever said. It's just like, very neutral, professional, but not blowing smoke up your ass. And I used to get auditions from them all the time, and you probably see where this is going. Now I don't. At all. I don't know why. I don't really feel like being that little guppy nipping at their toes like, hey, what happened? You used to send me emails that I never auditioned for because it was always old men that were way out of my voice range. So I'm assuming that I said something or someone said something to them about me or spread a rumor about me, and now I'm just blacklisted. So I'm just like, yeah, seems a bit of an overreaction. But at the same time, like, if that's how they're gonna be, then I don't really want to work with them. Like, if I'm constantly having to walk on eggshells and consistently stroking their ego, like, oh, this is the most amazing thing in the world, you guys are gonna fucking love this. I'd rather pass. But probably one of the more subconsciously tormenting aspects of doing voiceover would have to be just the feeling that I never know who's my actual friend. I know I touched upon this earlier, talking about just like having trust issues and being surrounded by people who are just trying to network. But I mean like being surrounded by people who are constantly just smiling and, yeah, you go, dude, you got this, hell yeah. You tell them like a piece of good news. They're like, oh my God, that's so cool. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. And you just know in the back of their mind, they really could care less because they have like a million things on their plate, but they're just trying to be super loving and supportive. That's kind of the whole community. It's very like if you ever express doubt about something or negativity, or you have like a moment of darkness and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I here? It's not often you get people like, hey man, I get it, chin up, it's hard, but we're all here for you. We got your back. It's just like crickets. It's just like, well, that guy's a fucking failure. He's going downhill fast, and I can't be seen with a negative Nancy like him. It's sort of like success by association. I only want to surround myself with talented people who are really climbing that ladder in the industry. God, the more I talk about this, the more fucking depressing it is. It's just like, do I really want to be in an industry where 70-80% of the people that surround me and that I'm going to be interacting with on a daily basis only care about me as long as I am relevant and continuously getting roles, or know important people in the industry that they can mooch off of, or people that might secretly hate my guts and I will never ever know about it as they are going behind the scenes and gossiping and convincing people not to hire me or trying to get me blacklisted for like a joke tweet that I made. It's like considering how much of a fun, artistic, creative field you would expect voice acting to be, it's full of a lot of hard asses. Very, very serious, very strict workaholics who do not tolerate any fuckery. And I respect that. Like, that's obviously a very valuable skill to have when you're self-employed, when you work from home, when you have your own home studio, etc. It's like, dude, you have to be that way. Of course you do. But it's just a shock. It's like, whoa, okay, you were really funny in that anime I saw, and you're intense, dude. Like, Did not expect you to hate the president this much, or to have such a very vocal opinion about this political issue. And like, I'll often say to myself, I'm being paranoid. Those people are my friends, and I'm just second guessing them, and I'm just being really negative. But then I'll remember all the times where they'll say the infamous phrase that gets tossed around a lot in these sorts of local communities. Oh, dude, we have to hang out sometime. We'll have to hang out sometime. Oftentimes I see them hanging out with their very successful friends that are voicing in this big summer hit anime, and they're there with all of the lead cast, and they're all taking funny pictures like, so-and-so had this coffee and he didn't like it. And then they just post it, and all their fans are just like, oh my god, that's so funny. Oh my god, you guys are amazing. I ship you too. Funny gif of a black girl clapping and laughing, going, you go girl, like just that. Forever and ever. And I'm just like, hey, you remember when you said we should hang out? No? Okay, I didn't think you did, that's fine. You said we should hang out, like, we've seen each other, like at the Asian market or like the sushi place a couple of times, and every time you do the same throwaway line, oh, we should hang out soon. Yeah, oh, dude, let's hang out. I'm free anytime, just hit me up whenever you're free. Oh yeah, I'm busy. Well, then what you mean is you're never gonna hang out with me. You're never... You're never gonna extend the invitation. You're just using it as like a loose segue to like, I have to go now, but I don't want you to think I hate you. So every time people say that, I'm just like, okay, yep, see you never. Got it. We used to be the tightest friends on these voice acting forums a decade ago, and now you want nothing to do with me. Oh, one thing I almost forgot about is anyone on the internet has probably heard about the whole KickVic fiasco. For those who don't know, there's a voice actor named Vic Mignogna. He voiced Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist. He voiced Broly in the Dragon Ball movies and everything. What's his name? Blonde fuckboy from Ouran High School Host Club, etc. There was a bunch of stuff, a bunch of allegations, and they basically fired him, and people got him kicked from conventions and everything. And then he like sued them, and it's just sort of been this ongoing litigation. I don't really have an opinion, not a lawyer. I've seen all of the facts. I keep up with it. I don't feel strongly either way. Because on one hand, it's like, if we're looking at the evidence, it's like, well, this seems a little bit of bullshit towards Vic. Like, I think Vic deserves a more fair trial. But on the other hand, it's like, I've had friends who have worked at conventions as like his assistant, and they said he gets like very catty and sort of becomes this huge diva and sort of treats them like shit and gets like overly flirty and touchy with people to the point where like everyone in the room is like, what the fuck? Again, not trying to say that he deserves anything that's happening, because I know there's gonna be some like hardcore I stand with Vic person in the comments like, fuck you, you don't know anything about the litigation. I watch Nick Rekieta all the time. And it's like, dude, fucking, I'm just forming my own opinion. It's fine. You do the thing that you do. But I bring that up not because I have any dog in that fight, but because as it's been going on, and especially during its advent, it was this unholy culture war where everyone that was in the industry, wanted to keep working in the industry, or was hoping to get into the industry, would just sort of toe the line and just say, yeah, #KickVic. Fuck him. And then the people who wanted to be voice actors and sort of saw all of this for what it was, they just go, no, fuck you, I stand with Vic. And then everyone's like, oh, you support a rapist? It's just like, okay. And in that moment, I think what I saw was an entire community of people who were willing to parrot the same opinion over and over, hoping that it would get the right directors, the right casting directors to notice them and go, the kid's got moxie. He's got the right opinions. And I obviously, as someone who recognized absolutely nothing to gain from any of it, I just kept my fucking mouth shut. That's actually another thing. I had a friend who was in like a voiceover workshop class, and the person told them, there are 3 things you need to remember when you're working in this community. Rule number 1, shut the fuck up. Rule number 2, shut the fuck up. Rule number 3, shut the fuck up. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds about right, judging from my experience. I mean, and again, I gotta mention the caveat of I'm sure it's identical when it comes to video game development, video game like coding, all the NDAs, anything in Hollywood, any sort of TV shows or big pilots. I'm actually pretty decent friends with like a really big name actor. I'm not gonna mention him just because I don't know. If this ends up being like a gigantic dramatic, like, did you see what this piece of shit his face said? I'm gonna share it to Twitter. Everyone shit on this guy. I don't really want anyone's names getting dragged through the mud in like a negative way, but I have a friend who works in Hollywood and is very, very successful and continues to be be successful. And even he told me, like, yeah, no, there are times where I will just get blacklisted and I have no idea why. And I know I didn't do anything wrong. Like, I was very, very well behaved the whole time. And it's just like, Jesus Christ. That's the kind of shit that keeps you up at night. I feel like there's no job security in the US anymore. Like, this is the most tangential tangent I've gone on so far, but my entire childhood has just consisted of my dad, who's extremely talented and intellectual and kind of a genius. He speaks like fucking 5 languages and extremely good work ethic and very resourceful, knows how to talk to anyone from any walk of life, super charismatic. And it's just like every 3 years, they're just like, fuck you, we're getting another person for this position. He's just like, thanks. And like a lot of jobs that I've worked in the last couple of years, I've come in and I've been really good at my job. Like if it's like retail or sales, I've been like the best fucking salesman that they have. And one day they just fire me and they're just like, yeah, we don't like you. And I'm like, can we talk about this? And they're like, no. Not exaggerating, by the way. That's happened twice in the last year and a half. And I'm just like, thanks, can I put you as a reference for my next job application? That might just be Texas, I don't know. But to get back to the whole Vic Mignogna thing, I've legitimately seen instances of people who are just sort of conscientious objectors and they go, I'm not gonna be nasty, I'm not gonna harass anyone, but I do believe that Vic Mignogna was unfairly treated, et cetera, et cetera. And then they just get added to a block list and they'll get blocked by like major people from big studios, just like, well, that person is encouraging a systematic abusive problem in the industry. And it's like, holy fucking shit, can we just tone it down from like 3,000 to like 5, please? And just talk about it? That doesn't exist. When you get into the acting scene, you get a lot of people who are just, I think histrionic is the word, where it's like everything is a catastrophe or the most amazing thing ever. There's like no middle ground. One of the reasons why I'm even making this video is because I'm pretty confident that most of the people in my community, aside from a couple of people that I'm actually pretty close with, and they're like, oh yeah, we're voice actor friends, but don't forget, I met you because I watch your YouTube videos and I realized you live like 15 minutes away from me. And I'm just like, oh dude, hell yeah. But most of the people that are like really big in these big professional industries, they're busy being big professional big shots and raking in money and fangirls and everything. They're not gonna give a shit what some pissant says on YouTube. Unless I came out and I was just like, fuck this company and fuck this voice actor, he's a dick. Then it'd be like, hey, call out post, ding, 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 this guy, don't hire this guy, thanks. I'm actually hesitant to even post this on Twitter, because that's the only place where my voice actor mutuals see it. And I don't know how they're gonna respond to this if they watch it. They're really good at being critiqued for their voiceover performances, but they're not so good at critiques of their occupational culture. It's like a stab wound into their very person. And it's just like, this guy doesn't like the way the industry is, he can get the fuck out. It's kind of like, you don't like our country? Go back where you came from. It kind of feels like that, but on an ideological level. It's just like, can you just like listen to me and agree or disagree instead of kicking me out of this thing that I've spent 15 years on? I think this video is probably long enough as is because I can see the sun starting to rise on my end. But I guess one of the biggest things I didn't expect in voiceover is that I wouldn't be good at voiceover. I never know what it is. I can never necessarily put my finger on what it is that I'm doing wrong. Obviously, a big part of any sort of auditioning process in any industry that involves auditions is that you will fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. And then eventually you'll succeed. But goddamn if those failures aren't soul-crushing, especially if it's something you really want. There was a game I auditioned for, there was like an Indonesian horror game. And people who have been following my channel for a long time probably know the one I'm referencing. And I auditioned for all the male characters, I auditioned for the monsters, I auditioned for just like death screams in the background. Didn't even get one. And I have confidence that I'm good at voiceover, or at least not terrible. So it's just, it always leaves you with this sense of confusion as to like, what am I doing wrong? Like I'm following all the advice of these people on Twitter who are lecturing me day in and day out, and I'm reading up on workshops and advice from the pros like day in and day out, and I'm just not getting roles. And one of the main things that I have to assume is that I just don't have a marketable voice. I have like an anime voice. I have the voice of like Clerk number 3. I don't have that voice that's like deep and textured and everyone's like, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, I guess it's just kind of generic, which is ironic because I had a casting director tell me, you have a very marketable voice. And try as I might, every audition, I just never hear back. Kind of sucks. Not trying to be a bummer, but it's just, after a while you hit this point where you're like, couldn't I be getting my doctorate or some shit? Like I'm about to turn 30. What have I been doing? And I think one of the most profound realizations that I had when I was thinking about making this video was that I sort of have everything I need with my girlfriend and my close circle of friends. I have this YouTube channel that's slowly but steadily growing. I have a lot of very dedicated subscribers that seemingly care about me as a person. Me and all of my shitty garbage hot takes on Twitter and occasionally pretentious YouTube content. There are people that actually, they stick around and they're like, hey man, I remember I got a comment one time that really fucking touched me. It was like, I made a video. I don't remember the exact video, but someone left a comment and they said, hey, this upload couldn't have come at a better time. Like my grandpa just died and I'm really bummed out about it. And I'm waiting for my family members to fly in and I'm just all by myself. So like this really made my night. Thank you. And that one comment that I got on a YouTube video is more gratifying than any interaction with anyone that I've ever had doing any sort of voice acting or interacting with any other people from that community. Not to say everyone there is a piece of shit. It probably sounds like I'm really being harsh on that community, but let's face it, this video would be really boring if I was just like, this is annoying, but I understand why they do it. I don't really like this, but you know, that's totally fine. Like, you gotta commit. You gotta fucking pick a side, man. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have control, for the most part, over my YouTube channel. Obviously, if someone decides to just give me 3 strikes on my channel for whatever reason and everything I've built up over the last 4 or 5 years is gone, then yeah, obviously that's a bit of an exception. But for the most part, I get to choose what I write about, what games I cover, what opinions I have, and nobody can fucking stop me. And as someone who really has a distaste for bullshit and just sort of phony people who say one thing and then do another and drag your name through the dirt and everything, I really value that. Just the ability to do what I want when I want on YouTube. And more often than not, there will just be people there who are like, hey man, you're awesome, keep up the good work. And I mean, not to mention, one of the best and most consistent and profitable voiceover gigs that I've had over the last, I want to say 4 years, is with my friend Jeroen, who lives in the Netherlands. He's this really, really cool guy who runs a channel called Strafe Fox, STRAFE. FOX. Ridiculous balls to the wall 3D production. One fucking dude doing all of it. I help him tweak his scripts and then I narrate it and then I send it to him and he throws me some money for my trouble. And it's like this labor of love that he and I have collectively put together. That's a little disingenuous. It's all his genius, but I can kind of throw my hat in the ring and be like, I played a very small part in this. And I just met him through YouTube. And I met a lot of really cool people through YouTube as well. But there's always the darker underbelly. Bam! Cross-reference. Go watch the YouTubers Are Not Your Friends video. Full circle. Holy shit. I'm a fucking genius. In all seriousness though, that's effectively everything that I have to say about just that entire topic. I think if voice acting is something that you really, really care about, and you have a strong stomach for the kind of stuff that I mentioned in this video, if you really don't care about the money like you have other avenues of income, and you don't mind spending hours upon weeks upon months, just sort of throwing shit at the wall to see what sticks, just to be able to hear your voice in a video game or an anime and see your name in the credits, if that's like extremely important to you and that's your dream, hey man, please don't let me stop you. I just had to get this off of my chest because it's something I've been holding onto for a long time, and when I make these sorts of frustrated ramble videos, I get a surprising amount of comments saying, thank you for making this. This really helped me. I thought I was the only one who felt that way. You know, I agree with everything that you said. This really gave me a lot of perspective. And then there are other people who come along and they're like, dude, you're a fucking idiot. You're entitled. You're immature. And honestly, I welcome those comments too, because if I don't get them, like there's the risk of me getting a big head and just like, wow, everyone agrees with everything I say all the time. So keep it coming, folks. Let me know if I sound like a fucking moron. And I think I will leave it at that. And I think I'll close out with a valuable quote from a voice actor whose name I cannot remember right now. If you have any other job opportunities available outside of voice acting, do that instead. Fun industry, and the bits of things I've gotten to do in it are pretty exciting. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not shutting any doors unless people shut them on me for this video, which I wouldn't really blame them. I think he was being a little bit facetious when he made that quote in the first place. But I think there's some truth to it. This really is a batshit crazy industry that is really only for batshit crazy people who really, really love it. So if that's your thing, go for it. I don't think it's necessarily what I was expecting or what I was hoping it would be. But maybe if you're someone that's sort of idealized and talked up this idea about being a voice actor, and you see how fun it must be to voice an anime, and you've watched enough of the director's commentaries where you see the voice actor in the booth recording and he's having a fucking great time, Remember, he probably had to climb up like 7 stories of shit just to get that one audition, and then they kind of kept rolling in after that. But everyone's journey is different, as they say. But I honestly want to know what you guys think, not in the sense of like, oh, please increase my YouTube comment engagement, leave a like. I just genuinely want to know what you guys think of what I've mentioned, and kind of want to hear your feedback on it as well, whether you think I'm being unreasonable or whatever. Per usual, I actually read a lot of comments, and I only delete the ones that are like, fuck you fucking moron. It's like, well, that's not adding to any conversation. But that being said, I'm gonna go to bed now and edit this in the morning, because what even is a sleep schedule anymore? All right, thanks guys, take care.